Introduction. Respect is not something you demand. It's something you embody. In a world where people test boundaries, dismiss your value, or subtly undermine your presence, reacting emotionally often makes a problem worse. Stoic philosophy offers a timeless approach to handling disrespect with clarity, strength, and self-mastery. Rather than seeking validation or engaging in power struggles, the Stoics taught us how to remain unshaken, protect our dignity, and respond with calm authority. In this lesson, 7 ways to handle people who don't respect you, you'll discover how ancient Stoic principles help you maintain inner control, set firm boundaries, and turn disrespect into a position of strength. These strategies aren't about pleasing others or proving yourself. They're about mastering your reactions, commanding quiet respect, and living with unbreakable confidence no matter how others behave. 1. To control what you can, release what you can't. The lesson control what you can, release what you can't is a quiet discipline that separates inner strength from constant frustration. Much of human suffering does not come from events themselves, but from our insistence on controlling outcomes, people, timing, and emotions that were never truly ours to command. Life offers very few things that fall entirely within our control: our thoughts, our choices, our effort, and our responses. Everything else, how others behave, whether they reciprocate feelings, how quickly success arrives, or how circumstances unfold, exists outside our authority. When we confuse influence with control, we drain our energy fighting realities that refuse to bend. Mastery begins when we recognize this boundary and respect it. By focusing on what we can control, we reclaim power. By releasing what we cannot, we reclaim peace. This lesson teaches that strength is not about tightening your grip on life, but about knowing when to loosen it. When you obsess over outcomes, you become reactive, anxious, and dependent on forces beyond you. But when you anchor yourself in controllable actions, consistent effort, disciplined habits, honest communication, emotional regulation, you build a foundation that remains steady regardless of external chaos. Releasing what you cannot control is not surrender, it is strategic detachment. It means accepting uncertainty without resistance and understanding that forcing outcomes often produces the opposite result. In relationships, this lesson is crucial. You can control how you show up, how you set boundaries, and how you communicate, but you cannot control how someone feels, chooses, or commits. The moment you stop trying to manage another person's emotions, you become calmer, more attractive, and more grounded. The same applies to ambition and growth. You cannot control luck, timing, or recognition, but you can control preparation, persistence, and learning. Letting go of external validation frees you to focus on internal excellence. This mindset transforms setbacks into feedback rather than personal failures. When things don't go your way, instead of spiraling into resentment, you ask a better question: what is still within my control right now? That question alone shifts you from helplessness to agency. Over time, this practice builds emotional resilience. You stop reacting to every disappointment and start responding with intention. You become less attached to outcomes and more committed to process. Ironically, life often flows more smoothly once you stop trying to dominate it. Opportunities arrive when you are not desperate for them. Respect follows when you are not demanding it. Control what you can, your standards, your effort, your mindset, and release what you can't: outcomes, opinions, and uncertainty. In that balance, you find clarity, calm, and a form of power that cannot be taken away. 2. Remain calm under provocation. Remaining calm under provocation is one of the clearest signs of inner strength and self-mastery. When someone tries to provoke you, their goal is rarely truth or resolution. It is control. They want an emotional reaction because emotions cloud judgment and hand power to the other person. Stoic philosophy teaches that while we cannot control the behavior, words, or intentions of others, we can always control our response. The moment you react impulsively, you surrender your authority over yourself. Calmness, on the other hand, keeps you grounded in reason. It creates a pause between stimulus and response, and within that pause lies your freedom. Provocation thrives on urgency and chaos, but calmness dissolves both. When you remain composed, you refuse to participate in the emotional game being played, and this alone often disarms the instigator. Calmness does not mean weakness or silence. It means choosing clarity over chaos. A calm person observes before reacting, listens before speaking, and thinks before acting. Under provocation, the ego feels attacked and demands immediate defense, but Stoicism warns against obeying the ego blindly. Most insults say more about the speaker's inner turmoil than about your worth. By staying calm, you separate fact from emotions and refuse to personalize what is not truly about you. This ability protects your dignity and preserves your energy for matters that truly deserve it. Anger is exhausting, but composure is efficient. It allows you to respond with precision rather than regret. Often, the most powerful response is not a sharp comeback, but a steady presence that signals unshakable self-control. Remaining calm also gives you strategic advantage. A provoked mind is predictable, a calm mind is unreadable. When you do not react immediately, you gain time to assess intentions, choose your words carefully, or decide whether a response is even necessary. Many conflicts escalate simply because one person reacts emotionally instead of thoughtfully. By staying calm, you break this cycle. You shift the dynamic from confrontation to control, where you decide the tone and direction of the interaction. This does not mean tolerating disrespect indefinitely, but addressing it from a place of strength rather than emotion. Firm boundaries delivered calmly are far more effective than angry defenses. Practicing calmness under provocation requires discipline. It begins with awareness, recognizing physical signs of rising anger such as tension, rapid breathing, or impulsive thoughts. Once noticed, slow your breath, relax your body, and remind yourself that no external comment has the power to define you unless you allow it. Over time, this practice reshapes your character. You become less reactive, more grounded, and deeply respected by others. In a world that constantly tries to provoke reactions, remaining calm is a quiet rebellion. It proves that your mind is not easily disturbed and your peace is not cheaply taken. 3. Set clear, quiet boundaries. Setting clear, quiet boundaries is one of the most powerful yet understated skills you can develop for a calm and respected life. Boundaries are not loud ultimatums or emotional speeches. They are silent standards that define what you accept and what you refuse to tolerate. When your boundaries are clear, you no longer need to argue, explain excessively, or convince others of your worth. You simply act in alignment with your values, and your behavior does the talking. Quiet boundaries come from self-respect, not from the need to control others. They are rooted in the understanding that you cannot force people to treat you well, but you can always choose how close they are allowed to be in your life. A clear boundary begins internally. Before you communicate anything outwardly, you must be honest with yourself about what drains you, disrespects you, or compromises your peace. Many people struggle because they set boundaries based on guilt, fear, or the desire to be liked. Quiet boundaries reject this approach. Instead, they are based on clarity. If this continues, I will remove my attention, energy, or presence. There is no threat in this statement, only a decision. When you are certain of your limits, you stop reacting emotionally and start responding deliberately. This shift alone changes how others perceive and treat you. Quiet boundaries are enforced through consistency, not confrontation. You do not need to announce every limit or justify your choices. If someone repeatedly disrespects your time, you stop making yourself available. If someone speaks to you without respect, you disengage calmly. If a situation undermines your values, you step away without drama. Over time, people learn how to treat you by observing what you allow and what you walk away from. Silence, when backed by action, is often more powerful than explanation. It communicates confidence, self-control, and emotional maturity. Another essential aspect of quiet boundaries is accepting discomfort. Setting limits may initially create tension, misunderstanding, or even loss. This is normal. When you stop overgiving or people-pleasing, some will resist a change because they benefited from your lack of boundaries. Quiet boundaries do not seek validation or approval. They prioritize inner stability over external harmony. The discomfort you feel in the short term protects you from long-term resentment, burnout, and self-betrayal. In this way, boundaries become an act of self-loyalty. Ultimately, clear, quiet boundaries simplify your life. They reduce emotional chaos, strengthen your sense of identity, and attract healthier relationships. People who respect themselves naturally command respect from others. You stop negotiating your worth and start living with quiet authority. Boundaries are not walls meant to isolate you. They are filters that protect your energy and ensure that those who enter your space do so with respect. When you master the art of setting clear, quiet boundaries, you no longer need to demand respect. Your presence makes it expected. 4.do not seek validation. Do not seek validation, because the moment you place your worth in the hands of others, you surrender control over your peace. Validation is seductive. It feels good to be approved of, praised, or accepted, but it is also fragile. It depends on moods, opinions, trends, and insecurities that have nothing to do with your true character. When you chase validation, you begin to live reactively instead of deliberately. You speak not what is true, but what is safe. You choose not what is right, but what is applauded. Over time, this erodes self-respect, because deep down you know when you're betraying your self-approval. Stoic philosophy teaches that external opinions are outside your control, and anything outside your control should not govern your inner state. The disciplined mind understands that character is built in silence, not in applause. A person who seeks validation is easily manipulated, because their actions can be steered by praise or fear of rejection. But a person who no longer needs validation becomes grounded, calm, and difficult to shake. They are not cold or arrogant. They are internally anchored. This inner anchor allows them to remain steady in criticism and humble in praise. Seeking validation also creates anxiety, because you are constantly scanning the environment for signals, likes, responses, expressions that confirm your worth. This keeps the mind restless and dependent. Freedom begins when you decide that your values, not other people's reactions, will guide your behavior. When you stop asking, "Do they approve of me?" and start asking, "Am I acting in alignment with my principles?" clarity replaces confusion. This does not mean ignoring feedback or becoming stubborn. It means filtering feedback through reason rather than hunger for acceptance. The strongest confidence is quiet because it does not need witnesses. When you no longer seek validation, you move differently. You speak with intention, you act with patience, and you walk away without explaining yourself. You no longer need to prove, impress, or perform. Ironically, this is when respect often follows, not because you demanded it, but because self-respect is visible. The Stoics understood that a person who governs themselves cannot be governed by others. By releasing the need for validation, you reclaim your energy, your time, and your dignity. You become less reactive, more present, and more powerful. In a world obsessed with approval, choosing self-approval is a quiet act of strength. 5. Respond. Don't react. Respond. Don't react is a lesson in mastering yourself before trying to manage the world. Most people live in a constant state of reaction. A harsh word, a delayed message, a disrespectful tone, or an unexpected obstacle instantly triggers anger, anxiety, defensiveness, or impulsive behavior. Reaction is fast, emotional, and automatic. It gives away your power because it allows external events and other people's behavior to dictate your inner state. Response, on the other hand, is deliberate. It is a pause between stimulus and action where clarity lives. In that pause, you reclaim control. Stoic philosophy teaches that while we cannot control what happens to us, we can always control how we choose to engage with it. Responding means you observe first, think second, and act last. It means you ask yourself, what is the wisest move here, instead of how do I feel right now? When you react, you often say too much, reveal insecurity, or escalate conflict. When you respond, you conserve energy, maintain dignity, and choose outcomes over ego. A calm response disarms provocation because it denies others the emotional chaos they may be seeking. It also protects you from regret, because thoughtful actions rarely require apology. Responding does not mean suppressing emotion or pretending not to care. It means acknowledging your feelings without allowing them to hijack your behavior. Anger, disappointment, or fear can be present, but they are not in the driver's seat. The disciplined mind understands that emotions are temporary signals, not commands. By responding instead of reacting, you train patience, emotional intelligence, and self-respect. You stop explaining yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you, and you stop fighting battles that offer no reward. In relationships, response builds trust because it shows stability and maturity. In conflict, it creates leverage because calm thinking sees options that emotional reactivity misses. In daily life, it reduces stress because you are no longer at the mercy of every inconvenience. The more you practice this principle, the more natural it becomes. You begin to notice the space between what happens and what you do, and that space becomes your greatest asset. Over time, people sense this composure and treat you differently, often with more respect, because they know you are not easily shaken. Ultimately, responding rather than reacting is an act of self-leadership. It is choosing long-term peace over short-term release, wisdom over impulse, and control over chaos. When you master this lesson, nothing outside of you can easily disturb what you have built inside. 6. Use silence as power. Silence is one of the most underestimated forms of power, yet it has shaped the decisions of leaders, thinkers, and strategists for centuries. In a world that rewards constant reaction, instant replies, and loud opinions, choosing silence is an act of control. It is not weakness, avoidance, or fear. It is restraint, and restraint is the foundation of inner strength. When you remain silent, you stop giving others easy access to your emotions. You deny them the satisfaction of provoking you, and in doing so, you shift the balance of power back to yourself. Silence forces people to reveal more than they intend, because most individuals are uncomfortable with emptiness and rush to fill it with words. By saying nothing, you create space for observation, and observation is where clarity lives. You begin to notice patterns, intentions, and inconsistencies that would be invisible if you were busy defending yourself or trying to impress others. Silence also sharpens your responses. When you finally speak, your words carry weight because they are chosen, not impulsive. This is why calm individuals often command respect without raising their voice. People sense that their word comes from thought, not emotion. Using silence as power also protects your energy. Every argument you engage in, every unnecessary explanation you give, drains mental resources that could be used for growth and focus. Not everyone deserves access to your reasoning or your truth. Sometimes, silence is the clearest boundary you can set. It communicates self-respect without hostility and confidence without arrogance. In moments of conflict, silence prevents escalation. While others react emotionally, your quiet presence acts as a mirror, reflecting their instability back to them. This often unsettles people more than any sharp reply ever could. Silence also builds mystery, and mystery fuels influence. When people cannot predict your reactions or read your thoughts easily, they pay close attention. This attention subtly elevates your position, because humans instinctively value what is not freely given. However, silence must be intentional, not passive. It is a strategic pause, not emotional suppression. You are not silencing yourself out of fear, but choosing the right moment to speak, or choosing not to speak at all. In relationships, silence can reset unhealthy dynamics by breaking cycles of over-explaining and chasing validation. In personal growth, it creates mental stillness, allowing you to hear your own intuition more clearly than the noise of external opinions. The Stoics understood this deeply. Mastery over oneself begins with mastery over reaction. When you use silence as power, you reclaim authority over your mind, your presence, and your direction. You stop reacting to the world and start responding on your own terms, and in that space of quiet control, true strength is built. 7. Walk away without resentment. Walking away without resentment is one of the most powerful forms of self-mastery, yet it is also one of the most misunderstood. Many people believe that leaving a situation, relationship, or conversation means admitting defeat or suppressing unresolved anger. In truth, walking away without resentment is not about denial or weakness. It is about clarity, emotional discipline, and choosing inner peace over ego. Resentment forms when we feel wronged and believe we must carry the weight of that injustice to validate our pain. But Stoic wisdom teaches that carrying resentment only extends the harm long after the event has passed. The moment you walk away with bitterness, you allow another person's behavior to continue controlling your emotional state. Walking away without resentment, on the other hand, is a conscious decision to reclaim ownership of your thoughts, reactions, and energy. It means acknowledging what happened honestly, without exaggeration or victimhood, and recognizing that not every wrong requires revenge, explanation, or closure. Some people will never understand the impact of their actions, and waiting for their acknowledgement traps you in a cycle of frustration. True freedom comes when you stop demanding that others be different so you can be at peace. This lesson does not ask you to tolerate disrespect or injustice. It asks you to refuse to poison yourself with ongoing anger. When you walk away calmly, you draw a clear boundary that says, "This no longer deserves access to me." Resentment keeps you mentally tied to the past, replaying conversations, crafting arguments, and imagining outcomes that will never arrive. Letting go breaks that loop. It allows you to invest your attention in what you can control, your character, your values, and your direction forward. Walking away without resentment requires humility because it accepts that life is not obligated to be fair, and strength because it resists the urge to prove a point. Over time, this practice sharpens emotional resilience. You become less reactive, less dependent on validation, and more anchored in self-respect. You learn that peace is not something others give you. It is something you protect. When you walk away with composure rather than contempt, you don't lose anything of value. You gain clarity, dignity, and the quiet confidence that comes from knowing you chose growth over grievance.